Good evening and welcome to the fifth in our DSB Digital Plus panel discussions. This one is entitled Wellbeing during and post the COVID-19 pandemic. And our specific audience tonight is teachers, parents, students. We've all been affected in different ways in our well-being, and this is an opportunity for us to meet and discuss different information that we all have about how to best manage our well-being. Just before I introduce the panelists for this evening, I think we would be nice to have a little introduction about what we mean about well-being. The WHO defines health as the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. In this panel discussion, we'll focus on the mental and social well-being, as these have been often overlooked. In our global response to the pandemic. In this panel discussion, I'll invite the panelists to talk about what is already being done in the organizations that we are a part of to address the well-being issues as students return to school. And then we'll look in greater detail at what issues may be arising and what we will try to give helpful suggestions as to what we can do to remedy these. Finally, we hope to provide a practical takeaway in terms of a helpful fact sheet to be mailed to all attendees at the end, and also set up a workshop for those of you who might be interested in exploring our ideas further. Our panel is a rich mix of psychiatrists, therapists, counselors, teachers, parents, with many panelists, including me, bridging all of these divisions. We look forward to an interesting exchange of ideas, and we will take questions from the audience at the end of the discussion. Please type any questions that you might have into the Q&A question box available to you in the bottom of your Zoom screen. So our panelists tonight, in no particular order, are first, Dr. Ambreen Pradhan. Ambreen, do you want to wave? Cognitive psychologist and director of Energia, an organization that works closely with schools, including us at DSB and with ASB, supporting the mental well-being of students. Dr. Jacques Marker, a leading name, undoubtedly known to many of you in child and adolescent psychiatry, and an evangelist for greater awareness of well-being issues. His organization, Empower, works with young people from most schools in South Mumbai and is a tower of support and strength for young people in need. Leena Godiwala is a parent and adult-child communication facilitator who has provided insightful training to teachers and parents across the city, and as a parent of DSB of 16 years standing, has an intimate knowledge of our school community and the sorts of issues that can arise. Former Cambridge coordinator at DSB, Akash Raut, is not only a principal of First Steps IB World School in Chandigarh at the tender age of 30, congratulations Akash, but is also a life coach with a master's degree in counseling psychology, and through his project Borderless Education reaches out to hundreds of teachers to lead them in mindful teaching practices. Finally, Dr. Howard G. is the principal of DSB International School, and as any of our parents would attest, exemplifies our values by putting the well-being of students front and center in all aspects of school life. For myself, as both a parent of a DSB student for more than 10 years and currently the head of the primary school, I too bring my own perspectives to the discussion and echo the commitment of my colleagues here in wishing to effectively meet the needs of the well-being of the students and the people within our community. I would firstly like to ask the panelists to briefly describe actions that are currently being taken in their spheres as our students return to school to address any well-being issues during and after the pandemic. I will start with Jacques, if you have anything that you would like to say on this.
Hello. So yes, so as you said, during the pandemic, which I think is still ongoing, I think what is gripping us all yet, even after the vaccine's out, is the still ongoing levels of uncertainty. I think at least for us as parents, I'm a parent too of two young kids. Just as of yesterday, they've gone to a new grade. and all the excitement, right, that goes into a new class, meeting your new teacher, new friends, is all virtual. Now, younger kids, I feel, have truly been the heroes of this pandemic, along with teachers. I feel teachers and young kids, they've just really been so beautiful in adapting to the pandemic and adjusting and accommodating to all the different changes and the virtual learning platforms. So for them, I think also readjusting back. So what we're all talking now about is going back into the normal realm of life. And somehow I, and along with a lot of mental health professionals, are feeling that's going to be a bit more difficult. So of course we will be unraveling and talking about those difficulties and what issues we are foreseeing. But I think that honeymoon period of the initial months, at least, of the lockdown, which seemed to be like one big holiday for everyone, everyone's life slowed down. We all had better work-life balance and family time. But then, of course, that changed because it was never ending, and it's been a year as we speak now. But getting back, I think, into normal life and routine with that same rigor after all of us have mentally adjusted to this 1 year is going to be a tough one. So I think as parents and as educators and as institutes, we have to work out some framework or a system on how to best do that to safeguard health and emotional and psychological well-being.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's, I think one of the issues I think around is that knowing it is the first step towards solving the problem, at least acknowledging it and recognizing that there might be something there. Akash.
So from my perspective as an educator and a school leader, the primary focus in the coming months would be around mindful thinking, mindful living, and mindful educating. Now, when I use the word mindful, we all need to be mindful that it's a buzzing word. It's a jargon which is in trend. And as many researchers have suggested, have shown, mindfulness is one of the simplest and most practical tool one can have towards sound mental health. And with every thought, every act, every intention and purpose of ours at school, if we tend to make it mindful, I believe we will help the students to support them in settling down easily. As Dr. Zirag just mentioned, the coming months are going to be crucial and the crisis we are yet not aware of. Thus, emphasizing a lot on social emotional learning has always been a priority, no doubt, and it will be a priority in the coming months and coming years. On a final note, I would say academic achievement is surely an important element in any student's life, but not at the cost of their well-being and happiness quotient. So as schools, we must focus more on well-being, social emotional learning, and their overall mental health at present. Thank you.
Thank you, Akash. Howard, do you have anything that you would like to mention in this area?
Well, I think a lot of what Akash said, I would completely agree with. I think awareness, making sure that we maintain good relationships with both our students and our parents so that we are listening to their concerns. Often these are very individual conversations that we have. And I think what Akash said was quite right. We need to be aware that there is a problem there and we may not always see it, but we need to be ready to respond to it. We also need to mark what has happened. We need to identify it, and there is good arguments for saying that some procedures and some structures are very healthy, and one of the things that we're planning to do is create an elephant walk around the school so that we are going to have little elephants created by the students everywhere, and this is going to be our way of marking the fact that it was a year ago that our school closed today, that our primary teachers are still working online and our primary children are still online, and that for those of us that are back in school, things have changed. So I think that those are things that matter, and I'll talk a bit more about some of the other things we talked about specifically in response to questions.
Thank you, Howard. Lena, would you like to give us your perspective?
Yeah, from a parent's perspective, I would say the actions to be taken, what I do and what I would also recommend is that we role model ourselves engaging with well-being practices, including what Akash said, being mindful. I tend to use the expressive arts to help myself with my own thoughts, feelings, sensations, memories, experiences over the COVID, and also encouraging children to engage in either mindful, expressive arts, and other well-being spaces or practices. And I would say also all the adult caregivers, learning empathetic ways of being, because children are really, some of them are struggling to express what they need to express. So we need to really, listen deeply and listen for that feeling, decode what they're saying, and reflect back those feelings to them so they make sense of their thoughts, feelings, sensations. So we can be, yes, role models and help them, help the children.
Thanks, Lena. I think it is
Yeah.
really important that we spend time understanding our own feelings so that we can recognize and support the younger children who don't have the same knowledge of themselves to help them understand what they're feeling. And Maureen?
So I agree with Dr. Marker when he spoke about it's changing, the honeymoon period is coming to an end. So pandemic has taught us new habits, new way of life. Now, some of this new way of life may be unhealthy. So we have to unlearn those ways and learn the new ways, because we're coming back to campuses, we're coming back to maybe normalcy. And unlearning anything is the most difficult phase. It's the most difficult too, because we have to come out of a comfort zone and say we're going to make a conscious effort to change it. So that's going to be a challenging thing. And as Dr. Marcus said, all mental health practitioners are working towards making an easy transition to create techniques and strategies to help people. Another thing is there are a lot of signs and symptoms. It doesn't look like stress. It doesn't look like a panic attack. It looks, it's just that the feeling of heaviness. Now, there are so many signs and symptoms out there which we are not aware about. It feels normal. It feels that, there's nothing to worry about. But anything that makes you uncomfortable, anything that makes you feel that you're not happy with it or you're not feeling very comfortable with it, I think you should share out, speak up. So there are signs, there are symptoms, if you're not able to sleep, if you're getting forgetful, if you're not able to concentrate, pay attention, they're sounding simple signs and symptoms. But I want people to speak about it. I want people to discuss this maybe with their homeroom teacher, maybe with their counselors, maybe with their friends, because help is available. Whether they are parents, there are a lot of parents out there, sometimes they're finding it difficult to interact with their children. Maybe they can reach out to the school and they can take help. So help is available only if they just ask for it or they just look for it. There is somebody out there who's willing to go out of the way and help them and support them. So this is a new phase of life. It's challenging, but we have to accept the challenge and we have to try our best to move back to normalcy and what they call the new normal now. We have to adjust to it.
Thank you, Amberine. We're now going to move into some more directed questions that we've put together that we think might help our audience frame the conversation. Before I do that, I would like to remind the participants that you are welcome to ask any questions in the Q&A box available to you in the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you open it, the Q&A button, we will address any questions at the end. So the first question that we have, I think we will direct first to Amberine and then to Zirak. How might you describe well-being issues that young people are facing as they return to school? And would you say that there would be different issues for children in different age groups?
Yes. So first of all, what are these issues? So some children, they may have separation anxiety. They may not be very comfortable being at school, so they feel scared. They're not sure because they've heard about the virus, but they don't know exactly what the virus. So they don't know what's going to happen. So they feel very conscious about it, and hence they feel scared, but they don't know how to express it. So there could be an anxiety over there. Some children, they are excited to be back in school, and they just want to rush into meeting people. They want to rush into meeting their friends, their teachers. And when you ask them to maintain social distancing and if you ask them to exercise social distancing, this is something which is not easy for them to kind of adjust or accommodate. So that itself will give them kind of an adjustment problem, or I would say a little bit of emotional problem over there. Why can't I not meet my friends, or why can't I not go and hug my teacher, or why should I now again maintain social distancing? So different children will have different ways. Now, some children, if they have experienced some kind of, like if there was somebody in the family who was unwell, and if they have experienced quarantine at home, and if they're still not able to deal with it, so they have acquired a behavior. So when they come in a new environment, they feel they're still not unsafe, and they might be carrying the virus and giving it to somebody else. So, all this behavior, a conditioned behavior, and then children finding it difficult to express what they're thinking. So what we need to do is maybe educate them. This is what it is. These are the signs. You are safe. Even if you just touch someone, go wash your hand. There's nothing wrong in it. Don't feel guilty about it, because the guilt sets in. Oh, I touched my friend. Oh, I did this. Oh, I did that. So we have to educate them, and we have to help them relax. So for example, when children walk in, and if you can just spend 10 minutes with them, that this is how your day is going to be. This is what we are going to do. And this is how you have to take care of yourself. This is how you take care of your friends. I think they'll pick up very fast, because children are fast learner. And as Gujarat said, they adjust very well to the new environment. So it's all about educating them and giving them simple techniques of how they can keep themselves safe and others safe.
Thank you, Ambreen. Jacques, would you like to add something?
Yes. So I think the issues that all of us are facing, like I said, as parents, as educators, and as mental health professionals, I think are kind of more or less broken into 3 blocks. We're looking at, social skill issues and social reintegration. We're looking at a block of health, which is mental health and emotional well-being issues and physical health issues cropping up, and academic-based problems. Now, starting with age groups, of course, the teenagers and the adolescents will have a different set of reintegration problems, and the younger kids at the pre-primary and primary section or junior school will have a different set of issues. I mean, of course, I can't get into all and each one's differences, but I think the main aspects that come to mind for the younger age group is the autonomy and the independence. I think all our babies have been so dependent on us, right, as parents, to set them up, to teach them the online platform, to log them in with either Google Classrooms or Zoom and all these other aspects. And yet, because it's been so new, right, to the teachers, to the students and the parents, we've all manifested anxiety. I mean, I know parents who get really worked up, say, if they're struggling with, technology, and it's been a real struggle for some of my teachers that I run the school with, especially the old timers in that sense, or the slightly elder ones who are not comfortable with technology. They've also manifested with anxiety, and so much of training and setting up that whole system. Secondly, we know certain parents, and I use the word helicopter parents because they're constantly hovering around their child. I mean, they've been, sometimes we're telling them that during exams or tests or assessments, please give them the autonomy and independence to, even if they make mistakes, it's okay. And then we realize, I mean, I've got a list, I can write a book of stories. We have parents dictating answers. We have 2 or 3 devices open. We have parents secretly logging in, and oh my, the stories are endless. Now, when you do all of that, or we even, sometimes when you wear glasses, you can see reflection of the parents behind the device, trying to signal them and hold up answers. It's almost comical, but at the same time, I get it. As a parent, you're actually, for the first time, the parent has been in the classroom with the teachers, with their kids. So you're so clear on what the strengths are, what your child's weaknesses are. And I think as a parent, the anxiety of not being perfect, living up to certain expectations, it's almost, I feel, parents psychologically have felt that their online learning is a reflection of them. So that whole weaning off process for the child and the parent, and I'm almost joking, I think for parents it's going to be like the empty nest syndrome. Suddenly when our kids are going to go back on that bus and back to school, we're not going to know how to spend our time, and the homes are going to be suddenly ever so quiet. So self-consciousness, confidence levels, and anxiety, as Amreen rightly said, are going to be high up on the younger kids reintegrating back from school, because here, the minute they're stuck, they look towards us for some kind of immediate support and help. And I think in the classrooms as teachers, we're always trying to bring about taking responsibility, being independent, and working with autonomy. Or changing from the health perspective, I think what everyone's clearly talking about is immunity suppression. Because we've all been locked away for a year, all our immunity levels are down, right? Because we've obviously not been exposed to the bacteria and the virus and the pollution, right? So the challenge for kids, what we're forcing is that when we're going to go back on that school bus, be integrating with so many children, there's going to be a lot of perhaps infections, different strains of viruses, perhaps so many kids with undiagnosed, say, vitamin D3 deficiency, which is going to leave them maybe low in mood, irritable, low on energy levels, high levels of fatigue. And we're seeing that because some schools have opened up even senior sections. Parents are telling me they've come back completely, extremely tired, right? And feeling burnt out and overwhelmed with that. And that's coming to another very important part that as a problem we're foreseeing for all age groups is sensory overload. Think about it. We've all been at peace with ourselves, noise levels down, pollution down, physical space is only with our families and loved ones. Suddenly you're going to be in crowded classrooms back again. So noise intolerance, high levels of more distraction and lack of focus and concentration, because there's going to be an auditory sensory overload, visual and tactile. So especially certain kids, and when I say certain kids, studies worldwide have already mentioned that 10 to 15% of all school-going children have a diagnosed learning difference or a disability, right? So whether you're looking at kids with ADHD or ADD, kids who have sensory processing problems, kids who have underlying mild to moderate or learning disabilities like dyslexia, dysgraphia, or dyscalculia, they've had a one-year setback. They've not had, say, their regular therapy sessions. They've not had interventions like either physical activity or even occupation therapy or speech and language therapy, right? So those are the academic setbacks we're looking at when these kids come into the classroom with these sensory overloads. That's going to make it difficult for them to reintegrate into another shift of methodology. Like I said, we've all been used to a different methodology of teaching and learning. This is going to be back to the norm. But for a kid, 1 year seems like a lifetime. If you remember, when we were young, a 1 month holiday in the May vacation was huge. I mean, we forgot how our school looked. So imagine for the younger kids that 1 year is going to be a huge lag and a setback to come back. And of course, from the teenage perspective, I'm foreseeing that a sudden sense of going back into social. I think they've all missed relationships, bonding, group dynamics. So I think there's going to be a high need suddenly coming back for that to fit in. So there's going to be more perhaps conflicts with relationships. Sometimes I think a lot of people are talking about high risk taking behaviors that are going to surface up back again. A lot of older teenagers who are abusing substances or smoking up marijuana, they are looking at that trending up again because things are going to get back to normal. And of course, social skills are going to be a high need for teenagers who've missed it perhaps for this whole 1 year. And apart from that, I think just the normal aspects of the norm, right? So suddenly noise, clothes, we've all, students are not really comfortable wearing their school uniform. I know so many kids who are complaining about a belt or the waist area because we've all been in our boxers or loose pants and trousers at home or homeware, that even clothing is going to have a kind of a sensory issue with kids. So I think I've covered up, try to cover up as much as I can based on the social health and the academic difficulties that we are foreseeing when we get back to normal school life.
Thank you, Chirag. That's very comprehensive. Also, it made me think that one of the issues that we are seeing is weight gain in the children. I mean, I think we've all, as adults, struggled in our lockdown weight, but a lot of parents have noticed that the limited opportunities for the general physicality that the students would have in a regular school day or just a day in the neighborhood has, without having that a lot of parents have noticed that their younger children have gained weight, and that they possibly will not even have the stamina they expect to have when they go back to a more active, open lifestyle. So that's also something that, you know, just takes people by surprise.
Sorry, if I may add, a very important point with teenagers is sleep cycle disruption. I mean, the amount of kids who we've prescribed melatonin for, which is a sleep regulator, which is safe, because again, like I said, on the lockdown and with screen time burnout, breaks were taken back on screen. So when you have that kind of extent of audiovisual stimulation, going back to social media or just watching a YouTube video or unwinding with Netflix, they not realize that sometimes 8 to 15 hours a day have gone just on screen time, which has made them wired and completely disrupt normal REM or non-REM sleep cycles. So that again has to be looked into by parents to bring back into a normal realm of cycles.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. I would like to now turn the question around to support parents and educators to help sort of articulate maybe what adults are feeling and how that will be different to what maybe the children will be feeling. Amberine, would you like to talk a little bit about what you think how the children is feeling is different from what adults might be feeling?
So children are seeing things from their point of view, which is their friends, what they want to do. They want to go for their parties. They want to go back. So, you know, they want to become active in their social life again. They want to go down to play. They want to participate in the games that they were playing again. But when you see it from a parent's point of view, parents are struggling, okay? I know parents who are, for example, they want to go back to their home country. I know parents and they cannot take a decision whether to stay in India or go back. For example, yesterday we met a parent and the parent said, you know, I want to go back to my home country to take the vaccine over there. I don't want a vaccine here. So now the children are, why should I leave my friends and go away? So there is a conflict over there. There are parents who are struggling with regards to their work, okay, because it's not normal. They have taken salary cuts, they're working overtime, and we still don't know how the work is going to be, how their professional work is going to come back to normal, how long it is going to be, because it's pressurizing for them, it's training for them. So right now, when the child needs help, we want the parents to step in. But what happens if a parent needs help? There are times when if parent have 3 children, you know, and for them to manage 3 kids at home can be very, very overwhelming. There are parents who do not have help, okay? So they are working, looking after the studies, trying to take care of the kids, doing their homework. So what is happening right now is the way we are trying to balance our life, the way we're trying to balance, we started with it's going to be there for a month. It went on for a year. And now we don't know what next going to happen. So we are reaching burnout. We are reaching exhaustion. We are reaching fatigue. And we cannot lose our guard down. We want to support our children. We want to take care of them. Right now, what we are seeing in conflict between parent and child. So if parents want to discipline them, they don't know what is the right way to do. Because if children are coming to school, parents do get a break of 6 to 7 hours because children are at school and then they can do what they have to do. So doing this multitasking is very exhausting and tiring for them. So what we are suggesting right now is people should take some break. So yes, as teenagers are there on the screen for 12 hours of, you know, maybe sometime 15 hours a day. So if we can cut short those hours, if we can have meals where we're talking to each other, where we are bonding, maybe we are playing games, we are interacting with each other, maybe doing something which is a fun family time and everybody is happy and everybody is feeling connected. We need to increase this activity. We need to increase this interaction. Also, sometimes parents don't share what they are experiencing with children. They feel like you should talk to your teenage children of what you're feeling, you know, the challenges that you experience. Maybe not 100%, but if you speak to them, they can also understand and they become a support system. So creating a support system, communicating, in kind of adding a lot of easy time, you know, sometimes doing nothing is also important. Letting your mind relax, you know, letting your mind rest. And then coming back and saying, okay, let's do some fun activity together. So between when I see parents and children, there is a little conflict that is coming up. They may not have resources to help them. So again, they can come back to the school, create support group, create smaller group, and start integrating again.
Thanks, Ambreen. Lena, would you like to speak a little bit about this dynamic between the parent and the child, or the different experiences the adults are having?
Yeah, I tend to think that though the situations are different, what we are thinking about is different. The underlying feelings are similar. Some children are feeling fearful. They've had a loss in the family. They're feeling scared around the COVID. Parents are feeling anxiety, feelings of uncertainty. Is this getting over or not? So I think the experiences are similar in many ways. And as parents, at least what I do is I like to engage in personal therapy for myself and daily self-care, which helps me to reflect again on my own thoughts and feelings around what's happening. And again, going back to that empathy, really being empathetic towards children. Children are having a hard time too at the same time. And we need to remember that children are having a hard time. They're not giving us a hard time. So we need to take responsibility and be there for them and help them to self-regulate, and offer them co-regulation, which is really, again, about deeply listening, allowing them to express what's needed. Yeah. So I think we are all going through just different feelings around the same situation.
Thanks, Lena. Just to make a slight distinction, can we talk a little bit about how the expressed emotions might be shifting from what was experienced during lockdown to what they will be experiencing as they come out of lockdown and go back to school? Chirag, would you like to talk a little bit about what will be different from what people have been experiencing now and what they will be experiencing in the next few months?
Sure. So I think, children, particularly, I think through the lockdown, and like I joked, after the honeymoon phase got over, where the fun and the holiday, because if you think about the first 3 months, I think I as a parent can look back and say it was a beautiful time, because genuinely we all slowed down. We all, especially us as dads, got far more quality time to spend with our kids, which we never had before. We got to have most meals in the house and home with them. Like I said, we all, had pre-way of going into the classrooms with them on the virtual platform. So along with the apprehension and uncertainties that created anxiety in parents, primarily, naturally as adults, for COVID-19 and the ill effects, because the story is built up from hearing vaguely about people getting afflicted with this. Suddenly every second and third person was in and out of hospital, loved ones were passing away. We were hearing about people we knew socially and so of contacting this. So it came closer and closer to home. And I think most of us were mindful or not discussing or over talking about it to our kids, and we kind of contained it. Yes, despite that, I think teenagers and adolescents and the older kids who did their self-reading and were updated with the news started developing a lot of OCD symptoms, actually, because especially if you had already underlying obsessive compulsive thoughts and fears or anxieties about contracting illnesses or getting unwell or getting sick, or ruminating about loved ones getting unwell and sick as well, those thoughts kind of multiplied a lot. And there were a lot of kids actually who were more stringent about the sanitization, not leaving their homes, not wanting their parents to get out. Even if work started for the parents, there was a lot of separation and anxiety and crying and actual fears, nightmares in younger kids, or sleep disturbances, and all of that we saw and that we're continuing to see during this phase. I think, like I said, coming back to the norm, it's more a feeling of uncertainty in another way because of the time lag. If it was 2-3 months, getting back to the norm would have been easier. But like I said, for younger kids, the whole 1 year started. So we're looking at maybe 1.5 years or God knows, even 2 years academically that have been lost. So that uncertainty is different. And like I said, what we're seeing and what I'm also experiencing with my 2 babies is that this almost uncertain with self-consciousness and lack of confidence. So when they're in that cocooned environment at home, absolutely fine and normal. The minute you step out, it could be a very close friend's birthday party, or even stepping down, or going for a class slowly. And I know a lot of kids who have gone back to schools, there's a huge sense of anxiety. Can I cope? Will I be able to be doing my homework independently? Supposing I don't know an answer. So, of course, these are the thoughts behind what's creating this whole build-up of what we call as underlying generalized anxiety disorder, where any shift of routine, change is creating this whole low of anxiety and self-consciousness, right? So those are the main aspects, and I already discussed about the sensory overloads, which I think in time, if we're all cognizant of it, and as schools we come together to allow what I call as systemic desensitization, not just bombarding them with a flood of everything back to normal. We'll have to do it very, very gradually, slowly. I mean, simple things like sometimes even shortening the duration of the day in school, maybe starting with a few alternate days, trying to have a zone where they can talk about things, practice mindfulness in the morning, introducing mental health concepts into the curriculum in schools. But very importantly, as parents and as educators, again, starting to talk. So as Dina rightly said, we have to start communicating in a non-judgmental, non-biased way through conversations that normalize these fears, conversations that normalize mental health concerns and anxiety, giving them the tools and the vocabulary and the communication to know exactly what they're feeling, why they're feeling, and being able to express it in the right way. But that won't happen automatically. We as a team of educators and parents have to do it jointly, because if you think about it, it's still all marks, exams, education, assessments, projects, completions. Who's talking to kids about stress management in detail? Talking about fears and what anxiety really feels like from a physiological perspective. Like, why does a kid in the morning feel like throwing up? Or why does a kid's hand start shaking when he's giving an assessment? So how to pick up these little warning signs? Again, navigate them with healthy coping mechanisms. We all talk about excelling and academics and educating the minds and the IQ levels. Who's talking about emotional quotients? So, discussing more nuances that are centered around emotional intelligence. Because at the end of the day, EQ, empathy, compassion, how to deal with failure, how to deal with loss, how to deal with anxiety, all this eventually navigates them with the end goal being resilient. And for me, I think imparting that navigation through talks, through mindfulness, through counseling, through mental health services is to bring about that inner strength. And that's what resilience means. It's not just inner strength to be able to cope with the stress around, but to bounce back stronger. And for me, then resilience becomes the ultimate goal to inculcate as parents to a child, as educators to a child, and as schools as a whole has to focus on that and make that the emphasis, which will make the whole weaning back into the norm a more fruitful process, a more practical process, and a more gentle process that keeps in mind each child's emotional and psychological well-being.
Thank you. I think I'd like to turn it around then and say to Akash and Howard, so what are the strong arguments for bringing kids back into school at this time? Akash?
Well, in my perspective, I believe, of course, we all know humans are social animals, and so are kids. They need to come back to school because they do miss their friends, they do miss their classmates, they do miss their teachers, and they have done enough of online learning. This virtual schooling has been, for most of the students, traumatic, as they have shared it, because it's just bombarding them with so much of content and no personal interaction. As everyone mentioned so far, the uncertainty, which was initially a honeymoon phase and later got on their nerves, They were like, no, we don't want this anymore. We want to get back to school and we want to run around and we want to do things like we used to do earlier. I remember getting a call from one of my ex-students and he was almost in tears. He was like, I feel something's like a big loss in my life. And that's the reason why I feel getting them back to school makes a lot of sense. Alongside what most of the parents have in their mind when it comes to marks and assessments and grades, I believe when they come to school, they become problem solvers. They become lifelong learners, as we always say it. And learning doesn't happen just in the form of books and taking an assessment. They learn so many things, which I guess as a teacher, I might not be in the position to teach them, but they learn things incidentally. And for those reasons, I believe getting them back to school makes a lot of sense. What do you suggest, Dr. Howard?
Well, I think basically most of what I would like to say about it you've said already, Akash. I would say that particularly for our older students, particularly students who are facing exams for whom it isn't possible for us to say, don't worry about it. It isn't possible for us to take that weight away from them. That weight is something which is bearing down on them from the fact they're doing exams, from what their parents' expectations are, from their own expectations on themselves. These have been very, very difficult times, and students are really, really struggling. I think it is our oldest students who undoubtedly have been most severely harmed by this socially and emotionally. And every day in school gives those tiny moments to start to help them to feel better. We all know that when we say good morning to somebody, it releases a little chemical inside us that starts to help us feel better. And when Jacques talks about resilience, I think resilience is absolutely fundamental. And our own bodies give us help. They create chemicals that are advantageous to us. So by expanding the number of people we see, by getting us to interact with more people, by giving us opportunities to help and support each other, in just very small things, giving an answer to a friend in a classroom, getting involved in the discussion, making a supportive comment when somebody else says something sensible in class, all of these things are actually meaningful in terms of developing back the students' resilience. And I think that's very much why we all believe that education is not something that you just do to kids, but it's something that kids are actively engaged in, and therefore they are getting little gains that are slowly building up their confidence and slowly beginning to build up their resilience. Because I really believe that for many of the kids, particularly in the sort of 16 to 18 age group, their resilience was ground down beyond it. And we still have children who are unable to come to school because emotionally they can barely face it, or who are unable to let go of this, I've got to be at home preparing, I can't waste time by actually being in school and being distracted. And those are the children who are most vulnerable. But at least this is giving us a chance to reach out. At least it's giving us a chance to touch base with them, and they're coming in sometimes. So, certainly I feel when we're looking at the 16 to 18 year group in particular, we are close to a really big crisis, and getting them into school is a tool, one tool in averting this for a lot of individuals.
Thank you. I think that a lot of the participants this evening also feel that there is a crisis for the youngest ones in terms of a year's loss of social learning. So to Amberine and Lena, I would ask, do you have any suggestions or advice to schools to how best to negotiate all of these issues from the oldest kids down to the youngest ones? Amberine?
Yeah, Shireen, I wanted to add something when we were talking about teenagers, and I'll come to this. So one thing we want to speak about teenagers is they are going through the IB exam pressure and the transition into IB, and that itself is very stressful without the pandemic. And with the pandemic, it's very, very overwhelming. I want parents to be an extra support to children over there and do not put pressure of success or do not increase the expectations from them. it's okay if they don't do well. It's okay if they don't get into the Ivy Leagues and all. So it's about setting real expectation, about setting real, how do I say, support from the child. We have cases where children were so stressed and they're at home that they had signs of suicidal tendencies, but they were so scared to even express it to someone, and they got into depression. So I want parents to have constant communication, constant interaction with children. And if they feel that the child is not able to communicate back with them, please immediately get in touch with a psychologist or a counselor and see if you can understand what this teenager or the child is going through, because they are really stressed because they have missed out on their SATs because the centers cancelled, the exams were cancelled and they got into panic. So for teenagers, we have to watch out for a lot of signs and symptoms because they are locked in their room and they don't come out and they don't speak openly. And we have to teach them to handle failure. Life doesn't stop, if you don't give one exam. So we have to actually create a workshop for them and make them aware about it. You work hard, doesn't matter what the consequences or what the results or outcome is. Now, with regards to when children come back, how do we support them? First thing is, if you can implement simple play therapy, helping them understand what are signs, just using play therapy, playful activities, games, intervention of helping them understand, if you're not feeling well, how do you speak, whether it's emotionally. So, give them techniques on what are emotion signs, what are behavioral signs, how do you reach out for help, how do you talk to people. So actually show them that this is your resource, this is your buddy, this is your friend, and you can talk to them. When we come to middle school or elementary school and middle school, we have to create what are called our structured timetables or a structured routine for them, where they know this is a free time for them, time that they can sit with their friends and actually share in terms of, this is what I did, what are you doing? Because a lot of kids are not able to talk to each other. So even when they meet for 5 minutes and they don't know what to do, how to play. So they're actually getting in forgetful, what games can we take? Can we create a new game? So actually helping them create some simple game that they can play with them. And see, when you come to teenagers, again, helping them manage time, helping them get little more organized than what they are doing. And when we come to parents, there are a lot of emotional techniques available, reinforcers available, so positive reinforcers available. So when you give positive stroke, it actually make you feel comfortable. So rather than using harsh vocabulary or harsh word, if we can replace them with positive strokes, positive regard, that will help children feel better, and it will help us deal with this whole period and time in a more systematic way.
Thank you, Ambreen. Lena, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, what we could do or what schools could do, I would say for teachers, it's the same for parents at home as well. Firstly, as I said, engage in our own well-being strategies. Learn empathetic ways of being. This is a learnable skill. Create safe and secure spaces for children. And one of the ways I can think of is, I think somebody mentioned it as well, perhaps opening the school day and closing it with 10 or 15 minutes of a really safe, secure, reflective, non-judgmental space where in school it would be teachers listening. If it's in a home environment, open and close the day where the adults are just listening and allowing children to express. Since Ambreen mentioned, some children are not able to express, and I'm just going to show, I have some puppets here, and you mentioned play therapy. So either creating their own puppets or shop-bought puppets. And puppets can help children really project their feelings onto the puppet and talk about it. So if I say, tell me what is the name of your puppet and what is he feeling right now? So it could be, his name is Meow, and he's feeling really scared of the COVID or whatever it is, it's easier for them to talk through a puppet. And of course, there are many, many ways through the expressive arts where we can get the non-expressive ones to express. The other thing is what came to mind for schools to offer, because also families and parents are going through a lot, as we've spoken about, to perhaps have a weekly community art space. If a school is able to do that, of course, preferably with a mental health professional or an expressive arts professional helping with this. So the community art space is for everyone, perhaps teachers on one day, once a week, parents on another day, children perhaps of different ages on different days. So once a week, you have perhaps a 1 hour space where through the arts, through music, through drama, through dance and movement, through mindfulness, we can engage and reflect on the play or whatever activity we engaged in, reflect on that. It's something else that's coming to me, as Howard mentioned, commemorate it. And of course, you're doing it through elephants. But also really to face what each one went through, because each of us is going through it differently. So perhaps to, have like, what was your experience around the last 1 year? Get them to reflect on it, again, through some of the arts. What are you going through right now coming back to school? And then what are your hopes for the future? Get them to create it through play, through writing, through drawing, through in a community space, perhaps through rangoli colors or chalk on the floor, which can be washed off later by the school. And, so everyone is doing it in a more playful way and yet expressing their thoughts and feelings around, what they've gone through, going through now, and the future. And also focus on wellness. It's not just focusing on what they've gone through. It's about, I think, like one way is affirmations, putting up affirmations. I just got one here, which is, I feel safe, I feel secure. Affirmations in the present moment. All is well. Everything is working for my highest good. From the situation, only good has emerged. I am safe. That's a Louisa Hay affirmation. Get them to do little post-its, put it up every day, one affirmation, each one puts up, takes it off himself. So just allowing them to face it rather than distract themselves.
Thanks, Lena. I think that's very helpful. I think a lot of the questions people are asking is around how do we manage the conversations at home? And I think providing practical tools like these to help particularly younger children express themselves will be very helpful to a lot of people. We've spoken already about the importance of resilience and how maybe some of that has been eroded by being at home over the year. And I'd like to turn it back to Howard and Akash and ask, we've now got a much more personal, concrete understanding of the importance of well-being overall, and particularly how it can drive academic success. So would you like to talk about some of the main takeaways that as school leaders you have gained from this experience in terms of embedding commitments to well-being in the school? Akash?
Yes. So firstly, I would like to begin with a very general question, that is, who decides the normalcy? We all are talking about the new normal, but who is the one to decide it? It's such a subjective concept because it differs from person to person. For every individual, what normal means is different. For someone, partying every night would be what normal lifestyle would be. Whereas for someone else, gymming every day would be normal. But for a student, it would be like, yes, going back to school and spending time with my friends and having lunch together is being normal. So are we actually facing the actual normal, or is it just the imagination that we are creating? So we all need to think, contemplate and think rationally in terms of normalcy. Being normal is going to differ in a long run. And in the coming months, each one of us will have our own definition of what normal would mean. For someone having emotional imbalance, might be something normal because they have been facing it for many years altogether. Pandemic didn't bring it in their life. It has been with them for a long time, and they might just say, oh, pandemic didn't do anything worse to me because I've always been like this. So acknowledging it would be something I would say we all need to understand, be adults, be school leaders, be teachers, or be any kind of support at school. Secondly, what I practice and what I have been telling the educators around is a mindful teacher can create mindful learners, and only then the school can function mindfully. So when I say being mindful, it is be alert, be in the present moment. As humans, we all have this tendency of pressing the panic button. The moment something occurs, the moment something happens which is not in our favor or not the way we want it or not the way we have planned, we just get paranoid, and then like it's a havoc. So rather than that, I always suggest, why not be relaxed, why not be alert in a way where we know what's happening around us, but we necessarily don't need to press the panic button. And that would only happen when we all understand the fact that learning, schooling, education, bringing up children, taking care of each other is a collective responsibility. It's not just the responsibility of teachers or school leaders. It's a responsibility of parents as well. It's a responsibility of parents because they need to, as mentioned by Ambreen at the start of the session, we need to unlearn a few things. So few things need to be coaxed in from the home because the students have spent a lot of time at home with parents. Of course, I understand parents have been struggling with a lot of issues at their end, work-wise, personally, professionally. But bringing this notion as a collective responsibility will surely do wonders. Apart from that, we did mention about, I remember Dr. Marker mentioned about helicopter parents. They are doing nothing fruitful, nothing I would say helpful. Rather, they are training the learners, training these budding young minds to falter, and not just to falter in the exams, but to falter in life. The coping mechanisms we talk about would just be in theory. Where is the practicality of it? The practicality will only be seen when we let them understand, dive into a situation and solve it on their own. So I always keep suggesting this to adults in a learning space. When we talk about optimizing a learning environment, we need to understand the subtle difference between involvement and interference. As a teacher, as a parent, or whoever, if I'm an adult in a room, am I interfering? Am I hampering the learning? Or am I involving myself in that learning process? My involvement is necessary and not my interference. And along with that, I would just add one thing. If there are educators from different school over here, try to bring in the elements of life skills, PSPE, like what is PSHE or PSPE? It's nothing but your personal, social, health education as the context of your lesson. The content will be learned rightly, appropriately, only when the context is set. Make your students feel welcomed. Make your students feel wanted in that space. Only then they will have that zeal and passion and motivation to be in your classroom. And post-pandemic, this is always going to be a challenge because dealing with young learners, they are just, I always call them volcano, which is ready to erupt. So we need to be really, really mindful as a teacher, as a school leader, that such situations can be curbed down only and only when we understand who defines normalcy, because it is different to different individuals.
Thank you, Akash. Yes, I feel that you covered a lot of very theoretical things, and I think that a lot of what you said resonates with me. I think it's very important to understand that, particularly when you're working with older students, they're very nuanced and they're very subtle, and they are, as Akash says, they don't want to be pushed into things. So if you create too obvious opportunities for them to talk about things, they're just not going to talk about it. You have to work out how you're going to give them space and make sure that you give them that space and that you don't try and interfere. So quite a lot of it is just thinking about how am I going to structure this through the week? How are we going to practically do this? Lunch times are very, very important. We have got more things going on at lunchtime. The kids are playing table tennis with each other. They're playing badminton with each other. They're sat outside so that they can sit around whilst they're eating, and they've all got their own little spaces. So this is a great group space, and you see a group of students who they've made this their space, and you can see that they're talking. And I strongly suspect that some of those conversations become more profound with time. But equally, I mean, we sort of did a entry pass into school where the kids obviously had spent time listening to me be boring about the safety aspects, but also we gave them an opportunity to express their feelings. And that was sort of like, that sort of worked and it didn't work. But what worked very, very well was when we gave them a 15-minute challenge to do all their pandemic returning to school memes, and those were really, really good, and we're certainly going to present those. They're going to be something that people see coming into the school, because they were certainly very funny and they showed real quick thinking, and it was good to get the kids to explain them, because sometimes I didn't actually get the cultural references, so that was very good. In our school, personal, social and health education is something which is done every week. So every student has a personal, social and health education lesson. Unfortunately, the teacher who teaches it was going to be with us today, but she's not well. But this is exactly what she does. She spends that time working to create students who are articulate at expressing their feelings, that through developing sort of emotional intelligence and articulateness, we give students, as we come back to that word, resilience again, and the ability to deal with different things. And also, I think, as Akash rightly pointed out, to accept that normality for each of us is different. We are all different normals. And I would just like to say that I think the power of humor is something that we should always keep in mind. You need to make things fun from time to time. And even a chemistry lesson can be funny, you know, and that's something that, you know, is true. So I thank you very much, and I hope that was of some practical use.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to everybody. So I think we have had quite a wide-ranging discussion that addressed both the issues that are going to arise from that lack of exposure to the wider world, that lack of resilience, that sensory deprivation, issues around self-confidence, going out and confronting the rest of the world for the first time in a year, that will be expressed in different ways, but will be felt by everyone, from the youngest children through the teenagers and even by the parents. And I think that we've also offered some ideas about how those feelings can be drawn out of students. It's hard enough, it's just as hard to get something honest and truthful out of an 18-year-old as it is from a 3-year-old. So all of these activities, mindfulness, diaries, humor, enjoying time together that's non-stressful, are all practical ideas. To supplement that, for panelists, we will be sending to everybody an information sheet that will list in practical ways offer solutions or ideas for everybody that as they're facing issues in their own households. So we'll be happy to do that for everybody. And we are also going to hold a follow-up workshop on how to implement some of these practices for anybody who might be interested in that. Just to bring everything to a close, I would like to invite each one of our panelists to discuss briefly what your hope, the big takeaway, what is your biggest hope that we have all learned from this pandemic about the balance between academic pressures and well-being? And I'll ask Zirak if you'd like to start.
Sure. I think my hope is, and my dream, and I always have had this as a mental health professional and as an educator and as a parent, that I hope this year has taught us all to emphasize more on educating young minds' hearts rather than constantly focusing on their brains and their intellect. The second aspect is the concept of balance. I think all of us have gone through a lifetime of either work professionally or as parents where we've kind of tipped that balance. So living in the moment, focusing on gratitude, balancing our physical health, mental health, gut health for ourselves, as Lena also said, self-love. I mean, I just feel if we don't look after ourselves, we can't be productive as fathers, mothers, educators, siblings, brothers or sisters, right? All our roles in life could get disrupted if we are not okay with ourselves. So taking time for mindful introspection, looking after ourselves first, all this to encapsulate that balance and that well-being that's into physical, mental, and work-life balance, right? And I think also it culminates into, as Howard rightly said, right, the epitome of all of this as a goal is building resilience for the next generation. It starts with us as educators, parents, but that resilience also has to come from us. We are the role models for that next generation, either as parents or as educators. And the philosophies that we instill in them hold strong sometimes for a lifetime. And that's the key. If WHO is today saying that there is one attempt of suicide every 3 seconds and one death by suicide every 40 seconds as we speak in children and young adults, it's a very scary statistic to go by. And then we're looking at WHO stating and through research telling us that this 1 year's scaling up mental health and perhaps mental health in the youth is going to be the next crisis like this pandemic. So preparedness, acceptance, early intervention is the key. Even in medical concerns, like something like cancer, right? The earlier you pick it up and diagnose it and the earlier you intervene, the treatment outcomes. It's the same with life. It's the same with everything. And if we all emphasize equally on balancing the heart and the mind and the whole focus on mental health, we're going to see, if nothing else, more resilient and better human beings. And for me, that's important, right? I mean, you can be a success and a ranker or a gold medalist in sports and on paper, on a piece of certificate. But how are you from within when no one's looking? How are you as a human being today, as a child that's going to culminate into the kind of adult you're becoming? And for me, that's a success. And to create successful young adults, the journey starts from us as parents, educators, value we instill. And I think all of that for me is my hope and my dream for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. And Maureen, would you like to share your wishes that what we have learned from this?
So as a psychologist, I'm very happy that everybody's talking about mental health. This topic was neglected, not taken seriously. And now people understand the importance and significance of mental health. So what is mental health? Mental health to be at peace within yourself. Mental health means you can handle your emotional outburst. You can control your impulsivity. You can control your irrational thoughts. You can express yourself in a healthy and appropriate way. So mental health is about taking control of what you're thinking, how you're experiencing. So when we talk about mental health, we are saying become aware of your mind, become aware of your thoughts, become aware of your action. And if anything that's bothering you, anything where you feel that you're feeling anxious about it, you're feeling impulsive about it, speak up, because if you voice it, we can help you. So becoming aware of different areas of mental health, whether you're eating well, whether you're sleeping well, whether you're communicating well, whether, if you are given a task, you're not feeling overwhelmed that you have to do a task. You're feeling happy about doing a task and not getting nervous or anxious about it. So mental health is about taking control of your thought process and reflecting yourself. So it's extremely important that we reflect. It's extremely important that if anything that's bothering you, we have to vent it out. So I'm extremely happy as psychologists that we're talking about mental health. I want parents to become conscious about it. I want parents to kind of how they're investing in a healthy eating habits, how they're investing in finances, If similar way, if they can invest in a mental well-being of their children, and if they get engaged into, helping the children take care of their impulsivity, their thoughts, irrational behavior, children will go long way. It will help them long way. This is life. We are going to see up and down, but if we can take care of it, if we can, handle it, then nothing can stop us ahead. So with this, we really want all of us to invest in our mental health, and how do we actually take care of it?
Thank you. That's a great sentiment. Lena, what about you?
Yeah, my hope. I would say as a parent, to be able to build resilience and to integrate the experience of I would say not just of the COVID, of so many other traumas that may have happened in my own lifetime. One is to reach out for professional help. Each of us can go to that next step. And the hope is, for everyone, for parents to engage in mental health themselves so that they can be helpful to their children. And what is it that I wanted to say? Yes, what I wanted to say is to really then, so that we can sing, dance, and laugh with our children and really be there to build our own capability of containing whatever it is that they are expressing. And, so it's a dance and open conversations. If we can have then open conversations, be non-judgmental, allow them to be who they are. And and thereby affect the mental health for the next generation.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Lena. Akash?
Well, my words for closure would be, let's learn from what has happened. Let's not erase the memories thinking it was a negative phase in our life. As humans, we always have this tendency of categorizing things and putting them in compartments of good events and bad events. There are no good events or bad events. We experience them differently. So why not think about what we learned from them? Why not think about what we achieved? Why not set new targets for ourselves? And I'm pretty sure for each individual, like as of now, I'm talking as an individual. I'm not talking as a school leader or an educator. Why not set targets for ourselves? And I'm pretty sure when we set these targets, which are realistic, and approach them with an open-minded attitude, things would change for better. And as I suggested, these concepts like change, normality, happiness, and what depression would be, they are all subjective. They differ from person to person. So if you're experiencing something, to sum up what everyone else has said, speak up, ask for help, find that first responder, look for that confidant, go for a professional help. That would surely help you. And to add on, as Amrin mentioned about mental health being discussed widely at present, and I'm really happy that people are concerned about it and people are thinking about it seriously. And taking one of the questions from the audience is, how do we deal with mindfulness? So if I quote it in simple words, mindfulness is the journey towards mental health. Being present in the present moment is mindfulness. Just indulge yourself in doing all your simple activities, but be completely engrossed in it. If you're listening to your favorite tracks, listen to it as if that's the last time you're listening to it. If you're eating something of your own choice, eat it with all your heart and pleasure. If you enjoy cooking, keep your phone away and just enjoy that cooking phase. If you're reading something, just read. Don't think about anything else. I know it's very difficult. And it's always said for any habit of ours to become a behavior, we need 21 days. For our brains to rewire and rethink and accept it as a behavior, we need minimum of 21 days. So start taking it as a self-care therapy, and only then we can see that positive change around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Akash. How about you, Howard? What are your takeaways? What are your wishes for the future?
Well, I hope that the awareness raising that has happened gives impetus to the wellness agenda. And certainly the wellness agenda in education has one very, very clear enemy, and that really is competition for grades. And it is not unsurprising that we, in a country of 1.3 billion people, particularly as we are living in one of the most successful and historically successful parts of the country, somehow or the other believe that competition is vital in all areas of life. And I mean, I'm not going to knock competition. It's got many, many benefits. But there is no doubt about it that competition and obsession with high grades is in no way, shape or form beneficial to education. It has no real place in it. And the idea that only those who come out of the top of a pile of a number of abstract sort of and arbitrary assessment criteria are going to be the successes in life is a complete, it's just not true. And therefore, we as educators really need to use the wellbeing agenda as a way of pushing forward an argument for an education which is much more holistic, and which certainly in our country here, where we have a huge amount of competition, is an argument that is far from one. There are many, many people from the government downwards who have said some very fine things. The latest Education Act is certainly much more positive, in much better in what it offers as a vision for the future of education in India. But the simple fact is that we need to change the paradigm. We need to stop talking about education solely in terms of academic exam outcomes, and hopefully the awareness of wellness, the raising of wellness as an agenda item is going to help drive the educational debate in this country meaningfully and at the grassroots level. So, excuse me for that one.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you to everybody for joining us this evening. I think that we have learned a lot about the power of self-awareness, reflection, engaging with ourselves and with our families, with our communities, and being patient and kind to each other. I think there's quite a lot of takeaways here for what rejoining a wider community will look like in a school environment and for the entire world as it gets back to some kind of normal. And I'd like to thank all of you for sharing all of your very insightful ideas with us. Thank you to Akash Raut, to Howard G, to Lena Doibit, Godiwala, to Zirak Marker, and to Abari Pradhan for joining us. As I said, we will be sharing some of the materials that we will have collected around this with participants. Please reach out to DSB or to Kanchan if you have any questions around that. We are hoping to be able to run a workshop. Finally, I'd like to thank Kanchan Mogre for managing this entire event, which I feel went pretty seamlessly. And to thank each and every one of the participants for joining us. I hope that you felt the time was well spent and valuable. It certainly, I did feel like I enjoyed the discussion very much and have definitely got a lot to think about going forward from today's conversation. So thank you very much. Wishing you all a good evening and looking forward to next time.